Hello and welcome to Community Connection. I'm Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague. As Johnson County continues to see a spike in positive COVID-19 cases, the state is taking steps to strengthen the enforcement of social distancing guidelines for bars and restaurants. Today, I'm going to be joined by guests from the Alcoholic Beverages Division and the Department of Inspections and Appeals to discuss those guidelines and how they are being enforced. We have with us Director of the Department of Inspections and Appeals, Larry Johnson. Please wave your hand. And the Administrator of the Alcoholic Beverages Division, Steve Larson. He's an administrator. Welcome, Steve. Jake Holmes, Education and Outreach from Iowa Alcoholic Beverages Division, and also Denise Rohlberg. Welcome to each of you today on this show. Let's jump right in by discussing the public health guidelines laid out in the Governor Reynolds Emergency Public Health Disaster Proclamation. What rules must bars and restaurants follow?
Sure. At first, it depends on which county the establishment is in. For those 93 counties, the same restrictions that have been in place for some time are still in effect. And that includes for bars and restaurants, the establishment must ensure 6 feet of physical distance between each group or individual dining or drinking alone. All patrons must have a seat at a table or a bar. An establishment must limit patrons from congregating together closer than 6 feet. They must also implement reasonable measures to ensure social distancing of employees and customers, increased hygiene practices, and other public health measures to reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. Also, depending on the activities that take place at that establishment, other areas of the proclamation may apply as well regarding mass gatherings, or if the establishment is a bowling alley, pool hall, amusement park, things like that. So obviously the newest proclamation affecting 6 counties, including Johnson, is very different from that. For that one, for bars, they effective 5 p.m. on Friday, they had to be closed to the general public for on-premises consumption. Alcohol can still be sold for carry-out, drive-through, delivery, to the extent permitted by applicable law. For restaurants, in this case, the proclamation says a restaurant is an establishment that has 50% or more of monthly revenue derived from the preparation and sale of food. The restrictions for those establishments are food must be sold with alcoholic beverages. On-premises sales of alcohol must stop at 10 p.m. All patrons must have a seat at a table, booth, or bar. Also, all patrons must consume food and beverages while seated. And then some of those additional previous requirements of each group or individual dining alone must be separated by 6 feet of physical distance. Patrons cannot congregate together closer than 6 feet, and then those other social distancing, hygiene, and public health measures.
So I'll fill in regarding, Mayor, the compliance initiatives. So Jake has laid out for you what the rules are, but in essence, as we do various compliance initiatives in Johnson County, our investigators would work with the licensee and then ultimately determine the facts of the case if we received a complaint or we, through discovery, felt that a bar was open in contradiction to the proclamation. And then that's a part of an investigation. The facts then would bear out whether or not there was non-compliance.
What are some of the steps that you all are taking with bar owners and restaurant owners to ensure compliance? And one of the things that I maybe want to take a step back and maybe talk about each of your division roles. So we have DIA, Department of Inspection and Appeals, and then Iowa ABD, Alcohol and Beverages Division. Can maybe each of you talk about what your role is and how you're going to play, what is your jurisdiction through this order?
So DIA is the regulator of our Food Safety Bureau. So we handle restaurants, grocery stores, bars that require food license. Where we are coming in and where our, as far as enforcement, we have the ability, we are doing 3-tiered enforcements. And so our first tier are establishments that only have a food license. we will take a warning on them, and this is more applicable to the 93 counties for social distancing. And then we will join ABD to conduct a 7-day suspension for violation of the governor's public health disaster proclamation, as well as then a third offense would lead to revocation of a license. With regards to the 6 counties here, the one thing I'd just like to note is if there is a bar that wants to transition their business model into a restaurant, that can't happen overnight. They just can't bring in a bunch of crock pots and say, okay, now we're a restaurant. And Steve and his folks will go back to ensure that that 50% or more of food is taken into account, and he can walk through what that would look like. But what I would encourage small businesses and bar owners, if you think you're borderline, are we 40%, are we 50%, or if you're a bar that wants to change, start serving food, please contact, in Johnson County, we contract out with the Johnson County Department of Public Health. Contact your food inspector to make sure that they have to look at steps, make sure your kitchen is set up in order to serve food, and we'll walk through that process. So if you do want to change your business model during this time and you currently are not set up to serve food, please contact your food inspector. So that's kind of our role in a nutshell.
Great, thank you.
As far as Alcoholic Beverages Division, Jake and Denise are very involved in education outreach, and then they collaborate a lot with DIA and some joint initiatives, and then also work with our regulatory bureau chief on any additional education that would be necessary. And finally, for officials in Iowa City or local licensees, we're here to assist them in any explanation or further educational materials to assist them at this time.
So in Iowa City specifically, which is a part of Johnson County, of course, the governor's orders came after there was a surge among 18 and 24-year-olds here within our community. And one of the things about coronavirus is how do we actually ensure everybody's safety? So with social distancing and hygiene practices being one of the things that we know is very important, what things have you been doing with the establishments, maybe additional steps of maybe showing them examples of how it can be accomplished? If you can talk about that a little bit.
I can touch on that. So our education team provides updates on the changes, any suggestions or clarifications that we have. We try to communicate those to all of our licensees, as well as the local authorities and law enforcement in the area. In addition to providing that education, our investigators have been out there meeting with licensees, observing their practices, offering suggestions when they can. And, I just want to talk a little bit about the numbers of enforcement. So since the announcement of the increased enforcement efforts through about the middle of last week, ABD has received 167 complaints, completed 167 preliminary investigations, completed 445 inspections, and opened 7 cases, which are in various stages of the investigation or administrative actions process. So the investigators are out there meeting with these license holders, trying to get them into compliance. The numbers, including this past weekend's work, are still being reviewed, so I just don't have those at this time.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what that local government involvement is when it comes to handling some of the enforcements?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So our investigators and compliance team do partner with the local police departments and the sheriff's office. So prior to going out and visiting any area, we're going to be communicating with those law enforcement agencies to gather additional information and then really focus our efforts while we're out there in the field.
And if someone is, or viewing some violations of the guidelines, how would they even go about reporting to you or to local government? How does the report reporting process go? What would you suggest, or what are your expectations?
Sure. So both ABD and DIA have complaint forms online, so you can visit either one of our websites. ABD's website is just abd.iowa.gov, and at the bottom of the page, there's a link there to file a COVID-related complaint.
In terms of social media, do you allow people to submit some of the videos that they have? Because we've seen videos on social media of bars and not following the governor's order. Do you allow that into evidence?
I mean, we're seeing those photos and videos as well. They can be used if they want to include that in their complaint, but we do want to be clear that our investigators are going to look and find the facts of the situation. So this is similar to anytime a single complaint comes in, COVID related or not. We can't just take that one photo or complaint and then make a determination. Our investigators are going to do a preliminary inspection and then determine the next steps. If they think that an investigation is warranted, then they'll open a case and work through to find those facts and gather all their evidence. So we can't just use that one photo primarily as the only as our only evidence.
Well, for every business that is breaking the rules, we have about 10 that are following the guidelines. And those guidelines are not designed to keep those businesses acting in good faith from opening, but rather to make sure that their employees and their customers are safe. Is that correct?
Yes, and that appears to be the case from what we're seeing as well. The vast majority of these businesses are abiding by the guidelines. That being said, we have seen a large increase in the number of complaints across the state. But to answer your question, no one wants to see these businesses close, especially the ones that are acting in good faith. But this virus is resilient, so it strictly is to ensure the public health and safety and attempt to slow the spread of the virus.
And Mayor, from DIA, all I'd add is on our website at dia.iowa.gov, not only do we have a complaint form as well, but we also have an FAQ and best practices. How does a restaurant conduct buffets or self-serve beverages, keep their employees safe? We recommend mask use for those that are interacting with the public while in the restaurant. So there are a variety of suggestions and best practices that both DIA and ABD came up with jointly in collaboration with those that are in the field to ensure that the spread of COVID is reduced in our establishments.
I appreciate you bringing that up because I think resources is important because COVID has been such a novel disease, right? Where CDC have come out with varying degrees of suggestions or recommendations to really be able to fight it. And for business owners that are really active in the day-to-day operations, now they have to step back and try to figure out how to abide by the governor's order and successfully. And so I think having those resources available to business owners is good. I do have a question about communicating with businesses and organizations that represent the business district to follow the guidelines and enforcement. Have you all been in contact with some of those business district representatives? Because I know that at least in Iowa City, we have kind of a business district representative. So have you been in conversations with those individuals to kind of help with enforcement and understanding of guidelines?
Yes, we specifically the Iowa City Downtown District. We had a call with them last week, but around the state, there's different organizations and associations, and we try to communicate all of the relevant information to each of those, just like we would with our individual licensees.
Great. Well, I think it's very important for people to know that there's two different types of entities that is a part of this effort, and I believe that the whole hope is for safety and the reduction of COVID numbers throughout our state, essentially. For these 6 counties that have been impacted, what are you seeing from the time the order went into place to now? I know we heard the numbers, but outside of that, what are you seeing overall?
Mayor, from my perspective, as we get daily reports from our team in the field, what we're seeing is overall compliance. There's always a few bad actors. We were in Iowa City over the weekend, and we always believe in second chances. So we happened to visit a bar because the bar was open. It was fairly easy to know that, and we met with the owner, and we basically gave him a second chance. The owner was very cooperative, and they closed their bar. So as we go forward, some of this is they were unaware of the content of the proclamation. So as you communicate to your community, to your businesses, it's always helpful to carry that message. But also, as Larry said, we don't want to be punitive. So in that particular case, the bar corrected their behavior, or corrected the action, and then we did not assess them, and there will be no action to be taken other than thank you very much. And then ultimately, if we don't get a complaint on this particular establishment, then we will move forward in other areas. So 99% is in compliance. It's that 1 or 2%. And when we talk about the lack of non-compliance, in certain cases it appears that they're flaunting it, but again, there's always optics. So as a part of that, that's why we try to get to the bottom line through proper due process. In addition to that, we are going to do an educational initiative to put out in social media those who are really working hard. So if there's anybody in your community, we would love to highlight them or anything like that as we move forward regarding those that are doing the right thing.
Well, it's always a challenge to make sure that everyone has the information and that they're abiding by it. And of course, if there are some people that are intentionally not abiding by it, and you don't have to prove that, except you just have to take time to say, hey, this is what's needed. I think my last question will be a little bit twofold. One, I heard from Director Larry Johnson about the website for resources. I wondered if I can hear from the Alcohol and Beverage Division, is that a shared resource between the two, or is there a different space where people would go for the Alcohol and Beverage Division?
Yep, so there's great information on both pages, and like we've mentioned, we have been working together to, compile answers and get those FAQs out there. So for ABDs, they can go to our abd.iowa.gov, and then right at the top of every page is a banner that says important changes related to COVID-19, and that will continue to be updated as things change.
Right. And then for the governor's order, for her proclamation, is there a place where people can go? Because I think sometimes individuals just don't know where to go. They're hearing things, but they don't know where to go. So where would they go for the governor's proclamation?
They can just go to the governor.iowa.gov, and then you can see all of the proclamations from that website. So you can search back to previous ones. We also do link to the most current proclamations on our website too, as well as DIA. So we've kind of got a one-stop shop with links to all those resources right there.
DIA has a specific FAQ related to Thursday's proclamation. So while we're constantly updating our FAQs as the proclamations and the situation changes, there is a specific FAQ. And if any establishments have other questions and they're frequent, please, there is a contact we'd love to hear to get it in writing to provide as predictable of a regulatory environment during these uncertain times as best as possible.
Well, the governor's order, it comes to a close on September 20th, and we'll wait to see what happens then. But the hopes of all of this is really to get the numbers down. And so I thank all of you for joining me today, the Alcohol Beverage Division, as well as Director of DIA, Larry Johnson. I really appreciate you all being here. wanted to know if there's any lasting words that you want to share with people today.
Larry and I, as we move forward, we collaborate and we're coordinating a lot of our efforts. And so we're always available to have any kind of a phone call with local officials there in Iowa City. In addition to that, for you to carry your message to your local partners in regards to compliance, coordination, to properly and in a way that's efficient and effective to either close current cases, or if cases are out there, that be communicated. But generally, that Larry and I are always available to meet with you and others as you continue to move forward to look for ways that we can assist in this journey over the next 30 days.
Well, I really appreciate each of you taking some time to help our community understand more and more about this proclamation so that they can be compliant, and we are all in this together. So thanks for being a part today. Really appreciate it. That's our show for today. For more health resources and updates, visit icgov.org/coronavirus. There you will also find details for the city's face covering order. We'll be back next week with more episodes of Community Connection. Until then, remember to wear your mask, practice good hygiene, and social distance from others. We're all in this together, Iowa City.